What's up, y'all? Many of you know this already, but I don't typically post my emotions or feelings on social media. It's just not who I am. It's not what I do. In fact, I don't really post that much at all, which is part of the reason why many of my friends have considered unfollowing me. But I feel like right now I have to say something. I have to say something about what is going on in America because I am a black man. It is who I am. It's the essence of my being. And I must say something about what is happening right now. So in America right now, it is very difficult to be a black person, particularly with the killings of Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd. A number of things have been brought to light. And I feel like right now, God has put me in a position to be able to have some incredible spaces and conversations just over the course of the last few years. And I feel like most of that is a result of the things I experienced growing up. And so growing up, I literally lived within black and white culture regularly. So in elementary school, my entire predominantly black neighborhood was bused from our neighborhood to a all-white school about 40 minutes out, and then we came back to the city and went to middle school in a predominantly black middle school, and then I went to high school, which is about 50-50, and then I went to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, which had a very strong black community, but in a predominantly white setting. And so I feel like I've been given spaces and opportunities to match up with those experiences where I am able to have conversations with people about this particular type of stuff, particularly race and racism and culture. And so what has happened over the last 48 hours and before that is some of my friends who are white, they asked me the question, like, T, my heart is broken. What can I do to make something change? What can I do in light of all this stuff? And so I feel like Jesus because I feel the need to answer a question with a question. And the question that comes to mind for me is the question, who is your neighbor? Who is your neighbor? That's a question for me because that is one of the things that resonates with this situation for me right now. And so in a place called Proverbs, which is a book in the Bible, there's an answer for that, but I think there's even more answer in another story that I want to point to. And my grandma used to say to read a Proverbs a day, and I had no idea what exactly would lead to that, but for times like these, it definitely works because it's giving me insight into some of the things that I need. And even if you don't believe in this whole Jesus thing, it's cool. Proverbs is a cool book because it has some practical wisdom in it. But this is what it says. I'm going to look to the right because I'm going to read it. It says, do not withhold good from those to whom it is due when it is in your power to act. I believe life is good, so I think that applies to what we're in right now. Do not say to your neighbor, come back tomorrow and I'll give it to you when you already have it with you. And so for me, I think about some of the responses that I've been hearing and things I've been reading. And a lot of the responses have been just to pray that God would do something special in the hearts and minds of everybody and that he would just heal the whole world. And listen, that's fine and good. But I believe that God has already given us the tools that we need to do more than just pray. I believe there's some action to that. And in scripture, it actually gives us an example of that. And it is in the story of the Good Samaritan. So if you're not familiar with that story, just Google it. But the whole premise is this guy asked Jesus, who is his neighbor, as a result of trying to become a Jesus follower. And Jesus answers him with the story. And in this story, he describes this man who is traveling on his way and he is beaten up by some robbers and left for dead. And along that way, while this man is on the ground and dying, there are two religious people that walk on the other side of the street to avoid him altogether because they're about their mission to go where they're going. But the third person that walks by them, which is the unlikely hero in the whole story, who is a Samaritan who had beef with this guy's kind, race type of situation. Instead, he sees the man, first and foremost. He cares for the man, and then he cares and he shows that by giving and spending his time, his attention, and his money. So in the story, he takes his own stuff and he bandages up this wounded guy's wound. And not only that, but he pours on wine and oil, which costs him money. He puts him on the back of his own donkey, which is probably disgusting. And then he also takes him to the local inn to make sure that he is good and gets rest that he needs. And he gives the man, the innkeeper, 2 denarii. He does that. So it costs him something. It costs him something. It costs him time, attention, and money. But first, he had to care. He had to care. So many of us who are in this position right now, who are thinking about what can we do, think about that as an example. But I also want to give you some practical tips as well. The first thing you can do is to educate yourself on the history of this country and racism in this country. In fact, what we are seeing is not by accident. What we are seeing is a result of years and decades of issues that we've been facing since the very beginning of our country. In fact, it is woven into the fabric of our country. So educate yourself, understand more about the situations at hand. The second thing that you can do, quite simply, particularly if you are white, do me a favor, get your friends together and y'all go to the police chief or the sheriff and ask for meetings. And in those meetings, ask for conversations about how their people are being policed. Ask about safety measures. Ask about the types of training that they are experiencing, whether it be the diversity training or de-escalation trainings. Ask those questions. Find out more. And the third thing that you can do that I think is very helpful is whenever you begin to vote, whether it's locally or nationally, think about more issues than just your one issue that you are agreeing with a particular candidate on. So in conversations that I've had, whether it's involving politicians who are local politicians or national politicians, the thing that keeps coming up is I voted for such and such because of this. Whether it's abortion or tax breaks or whatever, that's the reason why I voted. So I'm challenging you to think outside of that. Think more about the win corporately as opposed to just your own individual interest. And I think if we begin to think more about that and expand what we believe and who we're thinking about it for, then I believe there's something special that can happen in all of it. Listen, y'all, it's tough. Today's tough. And tomorrow will likely be tough again, and the day after that. But I believe at some point things will turn. Like I said, I haven't lost hope, and I hope that you haven't either. I love you. Talk to you soon.